Hey, it's Drybear. Today I want to talk about a very important topic as it pertains to Path of Exile 2 Early Access that I think isn't being talked about enough right now, to also just join the conversation about what people feel about the current state of the game and where its weaknesses are and its strengths. Now, I just want to address this kind of from the perspective that we're seeing around feedback around specific classes, different balances, getting stuck at different points in the campaign, certain bosses, clearing the trials that you need to get your ascendancies and reaching endgame. So posts like these I see a ton of people having feedback or frustrations, and you also see plenty of the other ones, and I think the game is doing phenomenally right now. They very clearly broke 1 million CCU across all platforms. They probably even peaked about 1.5 million. The game is blowing up and doing incredibly well. But I think there's something that needs to be talked about a lot more in the conversations around classes feeling bad, gameplay being too hard, and even posts like this where it says warrior feels bad. At all points in the game, it doesn't get better. You can see it has 1.1k upvotes and 1,000 comments, so it's a big point of discussion. And that is the idea around unreleased classes and unreleased weapons. And this is going to be a foundational discussion around the game design itself. So if you look at the passive skill tree for Path of Exile 2, you can see that there are these 6 exit points for the classes that exist. This is the foundation of the game and how it's designed. So you have your pure int classes at the top, your sorceress and your witch. You have your int/strength classes up here, like northwest. This is going to be your druid and your templar. You have your pure strength classes here, which is going to be marauder and warrior. Your dex/strength classes, your hybrids, here with mercenary as well as duelist, your pure dex classes with ranger and huntress, and then your hybrid classes of intelligence and dexterity, the monk and the shadow. So you'll notice that at north, at like southwest and southeast are your primary stats, all int, all strength, all dexterity, and then you have the hybrids of the ones they sit next to. And so when we talk about the game feeling like it's missing things, I think that actually missing the weapons and the available options for these classes is the biggest thing that's missing right now. And I would even argue that none of the classes are complete without all of their adjacent classes and weapons. Right now, we do not have any classes available in the strength int bridge. So trying to do something with pure strength or trying to do something with pure int is missing out a lot on these. We only have 1 strength representative. We have 1 dex strength hybrid representative. We have 1 dexterity representative and 1 int dex hybrid representative with 2 of the intelligence. And I think that all of the classes, all of the ascendancies, and all of the builds right now are suffering massively because of this. And the best example of this is going to be the warrior, which I think is probably the class that gets complained about the most out of all the classes right now. Case in point, posts like these popping up pretty regularly. And that's because it is the class that is the most left alone right now. It has no secondary class inside of its own tree. It is the only strength class that exists here. There are no classes to its right. It doesn't have flail abilities to pull from. It doesn't have any of the primal magics to pull from. There are no extra bonuses it can pull. It can go into this side of the tree, but that's about it. And it only has 1 class to its left here with mercenary. It doesn't have swords to pull from, and it doesn't have anything in its own category, marauder, to pull from axis. And I think that the best way to talk about the warrior problem is not necessarily that the warrior itself is completely broken or it's terrible. I think that the warrior has a lot going for it, but I think what the warrior primarily is missing right now is if you were to go to your character, like go to a skill gem, and you were to like go cut a gem, I think what it's missing most is all of these flail abilities that would be right next to its tree that it could gain by getting a little bit of int and using strength, all of these primal abilities that it would normally have easy access to, all of these axe abilities that would probably be related to pure strength, maybe more bleed buildup, maybe more armor break, maybe more clearing AoEs, so you can use Sunder on bosses and you can use the Marauder axe abilities to clear mobs. All of these sword abilities being able to apply more damage, and you can even see inside of the warrior tree itself, like all the way down here to the keystone passive Giant's Blood, you'll notice that on the keystone passive for Giant's Blood, it says you can wield 2-handed maces in one hand with triple the attribute requirements. Well, great. Okay, that's awesome. A lot of the warrior builds right now rely on Giant's Blood having 2 two-handed maces in hand. But the Giant's Blood passive also reads, you can wield 2-handed axes and 2-handed swords, which means the warrior is essentially designed to be utilizing all of those abilities passives and bonuses from the swords, from the axes, from the flails and primal magics, and all of those are currently missing. You don't have any of those to pull from, and even on top of that, not even all the mace abilities by default are there. And I think that that's part of the discussion that needs to be talked about, is how much of the game you're missing out on that's supposed to be there to help you fill your gap. Can you imagine what the warrior would be like if you had all of these axe abilities in-game? They're going to be primary strength stat, which means that all you have to do is loot an axe and equip it in order to use these abilities as part of it. You can even run, I'm sure, a ton of the flail abilities are going to fill gaps for being able to block with the shield warrior, being able to do slam effects as well. Maybe even aftershocks or totems can go really well on top of that. Like if we go into this area of the tree, we'll notice that there are plenty of totem stats here, even like all the way at the top, like in this pizza slice that's supposed to be for Templar and Druid, which are partially strength. You can see a whole bunch of extra totem things here. So maybe the warrior abilities that are supposed to be based on that, like Ancestral Warrior Totem, as well as the Shockwave Totem. Warrior has 2 totems in their kit, but they're also missing all the other totems that they would normally have access to as part of the game. And I think the same goes for all of the classes in the tree right now. Even the classes like, for example, Sorceress and Witch, which share the same nodes and have their weapons implemented in the game. You can use occult magic, you can use elemental magic, you can use wands and staves and scepters as well as part of this to make your witch and your sorceress better. And I think one of the classes that best represents what they're going for long term, or at least the 2 classes that I would say, is going to be monk and going to be mercenary. I think these are the most well balanced right now because of their available options. Monk sits right between ranger, sorceress, and witch, and there are plenty of invoker builds that build off entirely of sorceress abilities using elemental scalars. There are monk builds that use ranger abilities or use witch abilities for chaos and that sort of thing. Same thing for mercenary. Mercenaries will lean a lot on the warrior tree, but bringing in maces or using straight bow abilities like lightning rod, bringing those in, or even like poison or vine arrow on top of the build they're using for their crossbow. And that's kind of where it is. And I feel like a lot of the game is designed and balanced around the fact that you're supposed to be able to share these signature weapons, share these abilities, combine them together. And because we have so much missing right now, it ends up making some of the classes feel way worse than they normally would. And I think that Ball is in GGG's court to be able to hurry up and get these out there. Again, I still think that the Druid for the Primal Magic and the Huntress for the Spear, Spear and Shield, are going to be released sooner rather than later, because both of those were pretty close to being done before early access launched. But what adds to this even more is this image that we saw from a lot of their dev talks before the game even launched in early access, which explains exactly what I'm going over here, which is the stat distribution, availability of weapons, and the classes that go along with that sort of idea. You can see that maces are here for 100% strength. Axes are mostly strength with a little bit of dex. Swords and crossbows are 50-50 strength and dex. Spears are 75% dex, 25% strength because they have a little bit of melee. Then claws, which aren't in the game either. Bows are 100% dex. Quarterstaves, 75-25 with a little bit of int. Daggers and traps is the bridge gap between like sorceress, witch, and monk, having that, the shadow portion. So having daggers and traps coming out of that that are already in the skill tree, by the way. There's tons of nodes inside the skill tree right now. Like up here, you can see that like there's trap nodes over here, increased trap damage. There's dagger nodes that give you more dagger damage. And again, if you were playing a monk and you were trying to build out some more, physical damage, being able to equip daggers or play with traps would make a big difference. Even the adjacency here to the daggers and traps would make, I think, a lot of witch builds very interesting as well, potentially even sorceress builds. And then you have scepters up here, which are used primarily by mostly witches, but there are people that are running minion builds with all of the classes right now, to be honest. But adding in primal magic, which isn't like the magics aren't even listed here. So elemental magic, occult magic, and primal magic aren't even listed as part of the stat distribution because those don't require weapons. But flails from Templars definitely going to make a lot of difference. And you can see that the classes that get complained about the most, namely like the warrior, are missing over half of what they need. They are all alone in this pizza slice of loneliness over here with just maces, no flails, no primal magic, no axes, no swords, barely being able to reach crossbows, no spears, and then they have like the magic side of this up here, which it makes this class feel a little bit more empty or a lot more empty than it should be. So I just wanted to make sure that we had this as part of the discussion of what's actually missing from the game. And I think that this is kind of where people are warranted to say that they're waiting for release or more updates, is because as these weapons come online, these classes get released, they're going to fill a lot of gaps that exist in the game right now that will make a lot of the experiences better and more fleshed out, and potentially even make classes that normally feel weaker or feel like they don't have a place all of a sudden come into the spotlight, because they're able to activate the synergies they need to use all of their resources and bring those to bear on the difficult content, especially towards the end of the game. We also did a whole bunch of polls asking people what people thought about what classes are the most interesting. Druid, Templar, and Shadow are way up there in the interest level. People do want Duelist, Huntress, and Marauder, but people are begging for Templar, Druid, and Shadow right now because they fill such a specific niche that I hope that they're able to release those really soon. And by soon, I mean within the next 2 months or 3 months at the most.
If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.